Hello citizens, this is my review of My Time at Portia, developed by Pathea and published by both Pathea and Team 17. My Time at Portia is a life simulator with a focus on building your home, outdoor workshop, and creating a life for you on the world of Pathea. That last piece sounds very futuristic and science fiction-y, but it's just promotional material. It feels more like Portia is the name of the town, even if it's not official. There's this idea of this post-apocalyptic survival that, really isn't part of the game. This game is very similar to Stardew Valley, Harvest Moon, and games like that. Throughout the game, you're going to be meeting with people, exploring, gathering resources, and what makes My Time at Portia really stand out from the crowd is a focus on building structures and objects. Now, I'm personally covering the game because it's in the Humble Monthly Bundle of December 2019, which has now been confirmed as like the last Humble Monthly Bundle. It's in there along with Soul Calibur 6 and Yakuza Kiwami, but today we're going to be focusing on My Time at Portia for this video. However, I will have a video on that specific bundle coming up very soon, and if you're interested, definitely hit that subscribe button. It will help this channel grow. Now, before we begin with a proper review, I will admit something. I didn't finish My Time at Portia due to the size of the game and the complexity of it. There's still time left in the month if I really wanted to, but I've already invested over 60 hours and have earned about a third of all the achievements in the game. I will definitely talk about why I stopped playing at the end of the review, but 60 hours in, I don't think I need to see much more to make a final opinion, even though I'd love to finish playing it one day. Graphically, My Time at Portia is extremely solid. While the game can look odd the first time you see it, especially at the beginning of the game like here, you'll quickly become used to the look of this world, and some of the style decisions make a lot of sense, especially the ones that make the characters and objects pop a little more. This will eventually help you to differentiate items and characters at a long distance. Now, each character in the game has a distinct design that gives them a feeling of their own, and this isn't just typical stereotypes. Like, my favorite is the guy who runs the restaurant, wears kind of an old pirate's coat, and practices swordplay in the morning. I even have seen a kid join him some mornings, and then he goes and works his normal job. There's actually a group of characters that run a daily course around the city, including one of the city guards, as well as a big, beefy furniture maker, and more. There's little quirks like this that adds a lot more life to the city, even if you've seen this routine play out over 100 days. It shows you more of their day-to-day life, besides just what you're doing. And these all make the town interesting, but a little spoiler here, the town and the area that you can reach actually will also grow quite a few times as you play the game, and there's important parts to the story of that. There's a life to the world itself, and it helps make the game feel quite unique. It's a rarity for a game to do this once, but My Time at Portia actually does it a few times, constantly growing, evolving, and changing in minor ways. There are also enemies in this world, well, more beasts than true enemies. You'll end up killing them, and you can grab items off of their corpses, like fur, bones, feces, whatever you'd expect to get from a normal beast. There are also uber versions of most beasts, a higher level of course, but most of these aren't that special, just variants that have, slightly different drops, not even necessarily better loot, especially when you're hunting for it. You also have your yard that you can build your workshop in, and it also allows you to grow your yard, buy new land, and more. This is a big piece of the game, though, and you can set up your workshop as you want, whether beautifying it, making it a workshop to complete various tasks, or whatever you need it to be. There's also not much to grow in My Time at Portia. It's one of the reasons I called this a life simulator instead of a farming simulator, even though it is kind of similar to Harvest Moon and Stardew Valley. Farming is just a minor part of this game, and we will talk about that in gameplay a bit, but in this game you're going to be focused more with building. Speaking of which, let's talk about the story and we'll move on to gameplay from there. My Time at Portia's story feels odd at the beginning. In the preview I actually mentioned that I didn't think there'd be much to the story. You come to town, take over your father's shop, and from there are given tutorial tasks to get you used to doing minor actions. But wow, My Time at Portia is heavily focused on these quests. There are randomized quests that you get, there's commissions you can take, but there's a series of main quests that are the core of the game. Stuff that gets asked of the player to do, and these tend to be big tasks. The main quest is the meat of the game, and while there's a ton of other stuff to do at almost any point in the game that you're fully able to go and tackle, the large tasks can be anything from like building a specific item, completing a specific commission, or adventuring in a certain location. But the story is actually still going after 60 hours of the game, over 2 weeks of playtime, and I'm actually having a great time with the story. There are new characters, new locations, and events are happening all the time. You're building towns, as mentioned, bridges, new items, you're creating new machines to use, and even entering new locations as you go on. I won't go too heavy into this story as it's not extremely deep, honestly. The setup is mostly event, quick response, and then a small task for you to do. There are storylines like a group of hustlers who try to come and shake you down for some fast money or a new cave that opens up that you have to explore. There's very little repetition to this story though. With that said, the core of the 60 hours I played was more gameplay related, with the story only driving a part of that gameplay with, short cutscenes every once in a while. But since the gameplay is such an important part of a life simulator, let's dig into that at a much deeper level. A big part of my time at Portia is about playing your way. You might have a specific task, such as you have to build a bridge support or a bus stop for some reason, but oftentimes the story will just give you a quest, and part of that quest is figuring out how to build that next object. You might have to farm, build, gather resources, create new machines to build pieces of something larger, wait for various workshops that you run to finish cutting wood or something more, but sometimes this can just be waiting for something else to complete. You might need to wait until some research gets completed or get the right workshop item or maybe unlock a new area or similar quest that comes at the same time. But much of the progression of the game is linked to those main quests, so those are what you should probably chase, including new resources and, again, those workshop objects that I've mentioned. The hand-holding you get at the beginning of the game that teaches you the rules of the game actually ends within the first hour, and suddenly you have large goals being given to you, but no real hand-holding to let you know how to reach it. Players are expected to experiment, and that definitely works for the most part along with exploration, but there's also a wiki that is extremely useful when you really can't figure out how to reach some goal. Still, nothing is too difficult with the system of My Time at Portia. You just have to realize what is the next step of making the next big object, and that one part can confuse players or take a large amount of time if the research facility is involved, where they research or invent a new piece of hardware, but that's a rarity. The growth in the game is actually really consistent, and almost every few days you'll have a new big task, or some new hardware to play with, or building some new objects that you haven't seen before. This keeps the game fresh because you'll be doing more and more rather than building the same object for the 100th time. And players actually don't have to farm resources too often, at least I didn't. There were long periods where I either had all the resources I wanted, or I only needed a couple of them. I might have to go slaughter a few beasts to gather fur, for instance, but had everything else required. The only really hard item to find, in my opinion, was a tempering liquid, and there is a way to get that I found on the wiki, but you can also explore at your own rate if you want to try to figure that out yourself. Resource gathering is a minor part of the game, but it's kind of limited in its repetition, at least at one time. Let's say you have to go get some ore for some task that you want. You might spend a day in the mine, and you'll end up being set for like 2 weeks, maybe even a month, especially if you focus what you're doing in that mine. And essentially that means knowing what type of ore you want to gather. That could be like 10 hours of gameplay for just one trip to the mine. It's very simple that way. There's also a few parts of My Time at Portia that feels a bit unnecessary. True farming like Stardew Valley isn't that important. Maybe I'd grow some wheat, but everything else doesn't seem as necessary. I actually have not raised animals yet. The big thing, though, I found that I wasn't spending a lot of time at was the relationship system. But at the same time, completing tasks and beating quests still earn you relationship points with most of the town, and that's good enough. You'll find yourself gravitating towards the rest of the game as you realize over time you'll just befriend people, which is true even in real life. But the relationship system itself is kind of based off of gifts, and finding the favorite gift for the relationship system is very frustrating. Some people like fruit salad, like Emily. Some people don't. They don't really give you a hint at what they might like. The game does remember everything that each character gives a non-neutral response to on the character sheets, but like dogs might like dog food, but not meat for some reason, at least not raw meat. Cats like only fishes, no milk, nothing else, just fish. I honestly still don't know what the pigs like. And most humans are even harder to understand than these animals, and that just becomes a little frustrating. There are a few relationship minigames that also feel a little bit out of place. Rock, paper, scissors is fine, but it's only that. There's not really a huge reason for it to be in the game. There's actually also a sparring system that works extremely well when there's a town-wide event for a fighting tournament, but it actually makes no sense when you can beat the neighbor girl just because, or you can fight the town guard as well, and this improves your relationship in some way. It's a simple enough game, but it feels like it's out of place. Maybe it's just put there because they already had developed it, but it's not really a fun part of this game, just something that feels really odd. Circling back to that resource gathering, there's actually a lot of ways to gather resources in this game. The big one is, of course, that mining system. All the mines I've been to so far have no enemies. Just this amazing system that allows you to dig into the floors, walls, even the ceilings to dig upwards. Well, it does remind me of Red Faction. Yes, I worked on Red Faction Guerrilla and Armageddon. It is a fun little way to explore these mines, though there's no real danger here. The resources you need from each mine is plentiful, except for the rarest artifacts. There's also a real dungeoneering system, but it's similar to the sparring that it doesn't really feel like it's a main part of the game. You can run through a level and collect useful loot, but there's not much reason to run a dungeon outside of the initial run the game will force the player to in the main quest. There's also, of course, a fishing minigame, which actually works pretty well, but feels like a simple way to kill time, even if it is very enjoyable to fish. It's a nice diversion, and it's actually done better than it was in Stardew Valley, I'll say. Diversions are the key to My Time at Portia. While the main quests might take, a day or a week sometimes to build something big, there's always something going on in the game. A single year in My Time at Portia has 4 months, each month representing a season, very, Stardew Valley-esque, but there are about 8 celebrations in a single year. Each special day has something different happening, and a single year in the game takes close to about 50 hours to play through, so don't expect to run through a single year too fast. The special events themselves have special activities, commemorative gear, and a special currency that you have a reason to participate with each one of them. Outside of those days, though, the daily routine is pretty well defined. My daily list was to get up, check on my machines, go to town, and grab a new community commission. Those community commissions are actually kind of important because they give the player points for a workshop leaderboard, relationships with neighbors, and money, as well as more, of course. Each weekend, though, the commissions would switch to inspections, which are fun mini-games where the player is actually trying to find errors between 2 copies of a special object. If you get the commission or the inspection, you'll probably be spending a couple hours working on them, and then give the object to the neighbor who asked for it. Most of the time you'll be done with all these tasks around noon, so you can do anything else you want until 3 a.m. in the morning. Well, that is your bedtime, and it is enforced. It's pretty lenient. You don't have to return home, as staying out past 3 a.m. just returns the player to the bed after they faint. From there, the player is able to start a new day and start over. Now, players can go to bed at any time, of course, to advance the timer, but there's really no penalties for staying up as late as you can. There are smaller things to My Time at Portia that really stand out as a quality of life upgrade. The biggest ones are you won't be bored with everything that the game offers for you to try out or do, missions, and so on. I rarely went to bed early because there's always a new task for me to do or something to gather with this extra time rather than sleep in. The inventory system as well for your workshops are really well done. They consider all the items in your chest, so if you store an item that you can use as a resource to build some item, it will use that in the process of building something else. Money is also never plentiful in the game. It actually has a very good economy. I found that I didn't have to personally chase money or sell a bunch of items to make a ton of money, but there's actually bigger goals, such as bigger yards, bigger houses, workspaces for you to spend your money on, and so on. Even the stores themselves are actually well designed, with kiosks allowing you to buy anything you want from a store, even if the owner isn't there for, a story event or a special occasion or even just an animation they have to play somewhere else. You can leave your money on the counter for your purchases, and it's a well-designed system. And yet there are some issues I have with My Time at Portia. The biggest is the interface, which can be dreadful. After, 60 hours, I was able to get more comfortable with the system. Mostly, I just didn't try to use the parts of the game that felt the most awkward, but I got more comfortable with almost every screen in the game over that time. Though the comfort only starts to become natural after about 10 to 20 hours of play, which is a substantial amount of time, but it doesn't really ruin the experience, just makes it a little more annoying. Finding specific items can be hard if you need them to be in your inventory, which you do for certain commissions. And this does seem very nitpicky, but the inventory system at your house does allow you to tab between all your chests, so you can find items very easily, but it doesn't have a search function, which is like they did half of what you want, but you want that one more piece. So if you don't have a very specific organization system, you might be hunting through 12 chests and hopefully you can remember what the look of the object is and you find it at first. But eventually that will become frustrating, especially when you have more and more goods. As mentioned though, many characters don't let you know what they like or don't like. Toby, for instance, seems to like fishing and sword fighting, but he turns out to be more of an adventurer. But that doesn't mean he likes all the loot that can be gained from enemies. So what does he like exactly? Well, my Time at Portia's gift system really requires more trial and error or repetition to get it right. Of course, you can always hit the wiki on that, but I find that to be a cheat in this case. As mentioned, I also played about 60 hours of my Time at Portia, so the elephant in the room is, why didn't I finish playing it? As I mentioned, there's always something new to work on or a new piece to play with, so something must have gone wrong. Honestly, I stopped playing because after 60 hours, I found myself wanting to rush to the end of the game so I could say that I finished it for this review, which meant I was playing more to beat the game rather than enjoying the normal gameplay's pace, and from there, I actually decided to curtail my gameplay. I still want to return when I'm not under, an artificial time limit or desire to publish a review. There's at least 60 hours of content that I've seen already, and it could be closer to, 80 or 100 quality hours of fun. As such, I'm happy to put it aside with the understanding that I will be returning to my Time at Portia at a future date. That's the thing. My Time at Portia is an extremely solid game. It's an enjoyable game with a ton of content and a rather large story that will keep gamers interested for a very, very long time. While it might not have the action or adventure that some other games can claim, it's not attempting to do that, and it succeeds at almost everything it attempts to accomplish. I am awarding my Time at Portia a 4.5 out of 5. I'm actually quite happy Humble Monthly released this as part of its bundle because it gave me a chance to finally play it. There's even a chance I might be talking about it next month in the Year in Review. This is actually what I love to find. Very solid games that help define and grow a genre instead of just attempting to be a copy of other games. That's really what my Time at Portia is about. It's more for people who like Stardew Valley and want to see the transition to a 3D world, 3D graphics, or perhaps more story quests, but it shines in what it attempts. And that is my Time at Portia. I'll be back soon to talk about the Humble Monthly Bundle for December 2019 that My Time at Portia is in. It is the last Humble Monthly Bundle as they will be switching to Humble Choice next month. If you are curious about that or other games I'm planning on reviewing, of course, throw me a subscription. It'll help the channel grow, and for that I will be eternally grateful. Last week I put out a new video as well about how long games take to complete, with a little focus on My Time at Portia and Stardew. I think it's interesting and germane to this topic, so I'm going to pop it up on the screen. This also isn't the first 3D version of Stardew Valley I've reviewed. You can check out my review of Staxel if you want to compare the differences between that game and this one. It's really night and day of my opinion and the scores, so feel free to check that one out. Until next time, I'm King Link, and thanks for watching.